Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast. I am super excited because this is the first ever guest that we have had on the Beyond the Mind podcast. And it's someone that's been helping me, inspiring me, and pushing me to be better. Welcome to the show, Sam Crowley. Sam, how are you?
Hey, Iain, what's going on, man? Great to be here.
Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Obviously, I've spent time speaking to you and I've spent time listening to your podcast. But for the people that are tuning in today and maybe are unfamiliar with who you are, could you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do, how you found yourself doing it, and, just a bit about your journey in your life?
Yeah, man. Hey, look, it's great to be here. I love what you're doing, especially your Beyond the Mind podcast. Everybody needs that. It's funny. That's kind of how I got started with my own brand called Every Day is Saturday. 15 years ago, I was spent, man. I was just, buying things I couldn't afford with money I didn't have to impress people that I didn't even like, and I was frustrated, confused, mad, here's the funny part, and I was pulling down a good 6-figure corporate salary, and I'd been in the corporate game for 15 years, but I just didn't want to do it anymore. So I launched a personal development brand called Every Day is Saturday, which has a really cool ring to it. And so I said, why can't every day be Saturday? And I think, that's easy to say, a little bit harder to do, but once you really kind of focus on where you're going and what really, even more importantly, what you don't want to do, things tend to fall in place. Just take some action every single day. And for me, I just want to be a speaker. So now I'm a speaker, trainer, seminar leader, coach. And what I really specialize in is helping people find their zone of genius, their own message, because it took me so long to find mine. And I figured, man, if I can help other people get there a lot faster than I did, that would be pretty cool. So I've got a podcast, been going for about 15 years now, about 18 million downloads or so. And it's on iTunes, Spotify, everywhere else that you get downloads of your podcast. And it's just super cool, man, to be able to now be a dad and raise my kids with my wife, Angela, and just kind of hang out and work from home doing this thing.
Awesome, man. And, Sam, I know a little bit about your story. I've heard you speak. I've spent time with you. Can you pinpoint for us the day when you were done? When you were like, this is it. The corporate world is not for me. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm out. Yeah,
golly, man. There was a few of those days. It was always looking around at everybody else that just looked so damn miserable. Everybody came into work. They met at the coffee pot. Then they met at the water cooler. And then they hung out inside cubicles and were talking and complaining. And these are 30, 40, 50-year-old men and women who had no purpose to their life. And when I was in my 20s, it was great because I didn't care. I was just all about that single life, making money and going golfing and having a good time. But then once I started to find some purpose, being a dad, being a husband, I'm like, guys, come on, man. What are we doing? We're just playing a big old game of follow the leader. So right around the Y2K, right around the year 2000, I got promoted into management. And I started getting all this more responsibility with less pay, more aggravation. It felt like I was running an adult daycare, having to take care of all these people. And it just started to wane on me, man. And here's the wild thing, dude. I got 3 promotions in 4 years. And every time I got a promotion, it kind of sunk me in my stomach because it was good for about an hour to say, hey, you've been promoted. Blah, blah. And then I was like, oh, my God, now I got to do more, make less. And I started looking around. It was kind of a slow grind. And then finally, when my daughter, who was 3 years old at the time, back in 2004, asked me, Daddy, is tomorrow Saturday? Because it was the only time we saw each other. I said, that's it. I'm done. So that's how I kind of came up with the name of Every Day is Saturday, because my daughter used to ask me that.
That's awesome, man. And on that journey, so did you just quit, go home, tell your daughter, hey, guess what? Every day is Saturday. Launch this podcast, and everything was smooth sailing. 1 million downloads. You release a book. You get paid corporate gigs. I'm gonna assume that did not just happen overnight.
No, it didn't, and I'm glad it didn't, because had it happened overnight, I would have never been able to even teach anybody, because that's not real life. Real life is it gets worse before it gets better. and you got to really be committed, because most of the people, those statistics you see, Iain, they're pretty dead on. I mean, 9 out of 10 people go out of business their first year. And then if you're lucky to make it in your next 5 years, whatever statistic, most of them say 9 out of 10 of those go out of business. And what's funny is, even if you're in business, that doesn't mean that you're making money. That just means you're still in business. So for me, I bought a Quiznos franchise. I thought that's what I wanted to do, was be a franchisee. That was a horrible idea. I mean, I was not even cut out for that. Some other people can do that stuff. I can't. I needed to go the online entrepreneur route right out of the gate, but I didn't trust myself. I didn't have enough confidence in myself. So instead of doing that, I bought a franchise. I lost 300 grand, went bankrupt, filed Chapter 13. And then I had to go back to work. In less than 90 days after quitting my job, I had to go back to work, sitting in a cubicle, working for everybody who used to report to me. And if you want a big old slice of humble pie, man, that is it right there.
Well, I did a podcast yesterday, and that was my introduction to building you up to come on the show. I said in this podcast, I talked a little bit about my own personal journey and the adversity that I dealt with. And then I said, and someone who I know and who's been mentoring me has dealt with even more adversity than this. And I introduced you. And obviously you're further along on this journey. And what I was talking about yesterday is, if you want to be successful, if you want to keep progressing on not just the journey of having a good career or fulfilling your passion, but the journey of being a good father, being a good husband, ultimately the journey of life, you're going to have to deal with adversity. It's inevitable. So for a little bit of this section of the podcast, can you just tell us, how did you deal with the adversity? What other adversities did you face? And how did you maneuver your way around that? How did you adapt?
Well, I'll tell you what, let me fast forward, if I can, about, 7 years down the road, when I finally launched into Every Day is Saturday. We had our fourth daughter was born, but she was born at 24 weeks. She weighed 1 pound, and we thought she might live a few hours. At least that's what the doctors told us. And we prayed super hard when she was born, because a baby born at 1 pound is barely viable. And, she was in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care, for 221 straight days. And she made it the first week, the second week. And then she started to avoid these really big, landmines, brain bleeds. And we thought she might have cerebral palsy and all these different things. And, that was real adversity. A lot of people think that adversity might be your business. I thought up until then, my biggest adversity was going bankrupt. Well, when you got to spend 221 days driving back and forth to Children's Hospital, and you got 3 older kids that are in school that you got to take care of every night, and homework and baths and everything like that, then it really becomes to, a faith that's never been tested can't be trusted. So a lot of people are like, oh, I got faith, man. I got faith that I can make it. Well, have you really tested it though? Because when we had our faith tested with our daughter being born, that's when the biggest adversity ever, because I'm staring at all these millions of dollars in medical bills, a baby that can't breathe on her own. She needs a ventilator, and, who knows what the future holds. She came home on a ventilator, feeding in a G tube and all that. Now, the good news is, fast forward, she's 5.5 now, off the ventilator. She had a trach that came out. She was breathing through a trach tube, and, that's no longer the case. So it has a happy ending, but I tell a lot of people, man, look, you've got to be committed to this thing, because adversity is going to hit. And it hit. That was probably the biggest adversity that I've ever had. And it was more of a personal thing, but then it became business, because how do you work? Like, you got to spend 6-8 hours a day down at the Children's Hospital, and then you got to come home and take care of the rest of your family. Where do you find time? Well, I just brought my laptop to the NICU with me every day and worked online. And I used to thank God every day, man. I'm like, wow. Imagine asking my boss for the day off every day for 9 months. I mean, I would have been fired. And to be able to make that decision, 7 or 8 years prior to that set me up and our family up for that time where I could be there for them and not be a distraction, having to go to work and stressed out. That's why you go for your dream. That's why you make the difficult decisions when you're younger. And look, if you didn't make them and now you're 40 or 50, that's great too. Look, the best time to do it is right now. Really, the best time would have been 10 years ago. The second best time to do it's right now. So don't feel left out if you still haven't gone for your dream, or you still haven't, done that thing that you really want to do. There's still time, but I would have rather gone bankrupt 20 times than to have to live with regret of never even trying one time. You know what I mean?
It's amazing, man. And the reason I wanted to try and get that out there is because the athletes that I work with, or when I stand on stage and I do talks, I say, look, there's two things that you need to be successful. The highest performers in the world, they really have two things. They have the ability to deal with adversity and the ability to adapt. And your journey has taken you from corporate job that you didn't like, but super well paid. You quit that to become an entrepreneur. 90 days later, you go back because your franchise went bust. You go bankrupt. You lose 300K. You then quit again.
Yeah.
You launch your podcast. You go after it again. And then you're faced with this unbelievable adversity. And I think I can't even fathom what that would be like. I don't have kids, but I can't even really imagine anything worse than that happening in the world. So you're hit with that. And ultimately, you've pushed on through all of that to create a podcast with over 18 million downloads, stand on stage, spreading positive change and helping people like me and inspiring people like me to be better. So what I would love to do before we begin to wrap up is for you, if you could give one piece of advice. And obviously on this podcast, we call it Beyond the Mind because we don't just want it to be words. We want it to be actions. We passionately believe that willpower doesn't work. Just trying to change your mindset, just thinking about doing something isn't going to happen. If someone wants to make the changes to their life, go on a journey like you've been on, deal with adversity, especially in these testing times with what's going on in the world right now with the coronavirus and the lockdown, what is one thing that they could apply to their environment or practically do to spark that change and maybe have some of the success that you've had?
Well, look, you're right. I mean, being at the time of this recording, being in lockdown, with the coronavirus, when I would tell people is, first of all, you can't really do much offline until we can all go out again, which will be very soon. Nothing's forever, but what you just said is the answer, changing your environment. When I started changing the people who I hung around, I used to hang around a bunch of corporate guys and we would do the corporate guy thing. We'd go to happy hour, play golf, whatever. I mean, we'd go to a job, everything revolved around our job. But when I started hanging around entrepreneurs, it was completely different. Everything kind of revolved around the purpose and the mission that we wanted to do. We all had these really crazy ideas. And, if everybody in the room thinks you're crazy, then you're on the right track. If everybody in the room agrees with you, then you got to find a new group of people because that's just not a good group to be in. I'm not saying people aren't going to encourage you when you're in with entrepreneurs, but, I think when you're sitting there and you're like, man, does anybody get me? Like, does anybody understand that I just don't want to, die at the age of 25 years old and just take 50 years to bury me? I mean, because that's the kind of people I was hanging around. They just wanted to get to retirement. That was their whole goal, is to get the 401k and the retirement and all that. When, Les Brown said it beautifully, we're all born an original, but most of us die a copy. And if I could give one piece of advice, if you're at home or at work or on your laptop at the moment, get on YouTube and search for either personal development or how to. For example, I was self-taught with internet marketing just to get my business up and running. Now I hire it all out. But look, if I wanted a WordPress site done or a funnel or a merchant account or learn how to host a webinar on GoToMeeting or Zoom or something, I just got on YouTube and I would sit there with a cup of coffee for 30 to 60 minutes and I would watch the entire video, take notes, stop, pause, take more notes, stop, pause. And I was self-taught because I didn't have a choice. I didn't have money to pay out to people. And it was a 30 minutes to an hour that I didn't have to watch television or listen to somebody else that was going through, that average type of lifestyle. I wanted to better myself. So if you are only online right now and you can't get out with people currently at the moment, get on YouTube and just learn and watch video upon video. And here's my advice. Watch videos that have the most views that are the most recent. So if it's 2020, If we're in the year 2020, find something towards the latter part of 2019 into this year, which will give you the most recent and the most views. Those are people that know what they're doing. There's a lot of amazing free content out there. Bombard yourself with podcasts. They're free. There's no charge, just like this one, which will help you in your personal development journey to stay focused, to stay motivated. That's what I do every single day. I listen to audios and bombard my mind. You know, Iain, when I was stuck in that bankruptcy, we didn't have podcasts, but we had CDs, and I would put in Tony Robbins, Bob Proctor, Les Brown, Dennis Waitley, Jim Rohn, people like that. And it would just be in my car nonstop when I was going on sales calls, when I was going to work. I didn't listen to talk radio. I tuned all that stuff out. So the answer was in your question when you talked about changing the environment and willpower doesn't work. It's no different than if you wanted to get in the best shape of your life and really get healthy, then you go right into your pantry and you throw everything out. That is all.
Exactly, yeah.
Because then there's no temptation. So if you want to be successful, you go into your friend group and you throw everybody out. You know, I went into the contacts on my phone and I deleted everybody. Helping, hurting. That's what I went. Ask my question. Helping? Are they helping me or hurting me? And most of them were hurting me. So I deleted every single contact. And I just pulled over to the side of the road and did it one day and ate my lunch out of a brown bag and deleted every single person who I knew was going to be toxic if I wanted to be something great. Look, we're not talking about being average, dude. We're not talking about anybody can make it to a millionaire. Anybody can make it to 65 and tap into your 401k. Everybody can. There's nothing special about that. What's special is individuals like yourself and other entrepreneurs who are out there starting from absolutely freaking nothing, like nothing but a blank piece of paper, putting everything at risk because they want to be the change that they want to see in the world. That's special. So when you Google Iain Highfield 5 years from now, it's going to look completely different than it does right now. It's not going to have your LinkedIn profile with that stupid photo with his tie and, you know, staring at like you're a hostage, you know, staring at the camera, like, look at me, I got my 8th promotion and I'm aging like a president, you know. Nobody wants that life, but very few people can take that chance, like what you're doing with the podcast and the movement that you're launching. So that was a long answer to the question, but I get freaking excited, man. And I get really jacked up when I talk about making a difference and being an entrepreneur because so few people understand that it's not about them. When you go to a job, it's all about you, your promotion, your title, your status, your income, all that stuff, you know. But when you become an entrepreneur, it's all about the message and the movement that you want to create.
Absolutely. It's an awesome answer. And, you know, you've been an addition to my environment that is helping me then in turn evolve my mindset. And I'm just going to add one more thing before we close. One of the biggest things for me on this journey was I did something that you said you did. You didn't quite go all in. You know, you said you bought a franchise, but that's not quite all in. When I moved to the USA, I took a 5% stake in a business that I founded. And then when I left that business, I got an investor to support me so I could pay myself a wage. So I used to claim I was an entrepreneur, but I wasn't all in. Now, 5 months ago, I went fully out on my own. I got credit cards, I got everything I could, and I've put my own skin in the game. So I'm almost now, you're in too deep. My environment drives me now because that safety net, that comfort blanket has been taken from under me. And I have paid people to help me. I've done the things that you've said. I've been on YouTube, done some of my own learning, been on Fiverr, invested in marketing, in sales. So my environment now, every day I wake up with the pressure of, okay, I eat what I kill. How are we going to get better every day? How are we going to put this message out there? So you've helped me with that. And I know that you help other people with that. So if someone listening wants to get more skin in the game, wants to take that leap of faith, wants to be committed and get some help from your good self, how can they go about that?
Well, the easiest way to do it is just go to everydayissaturday.com. You can listen to all my podcasts are archived there for the last 10 to 12 years, probably longer than that. And you can always listen to the Everyday is Saturday podcast on iTunes as well, or wherever you get podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. So those two places, either everydayissaturday.com or just check out the podcast out there. And you're right, man. When you go all in, you become dangerous. You know, it's like if you've ever played poker, which I'm not really a big poker player, but I've seen those guys with the cowboy hat and the sunglasses, and they put those chips right in the middle of the table. And all of a sudden, everybody gets tense and everybody starts watching. And that, and that's what it's like as an entrepreneur. When you say, I'm putting all my chips on the table, it's like, you don't know the outcome, but you know, you're pretty damn dangerous at that point because everybody's watching. Awesome,
man. That's a great little story to finish on. Sam, you're definitely dangerous. You're crushing it. I enjoy listening to your podcast. I enjoy speaking to you. Keep spreading positive change. Keep helping people change their environment and change their life. Thanks for being on the podcast, dude.
You got it, Ian. Have a great day, brother. Thank you.
Take care, man.